Hey, how's it going? It's Dan from modular.dev, and today we're going to continue on with our series in creating websites for the beginner. And today I think it's going to be the last one that we do. We've gone over a good number of things from animations and images and videos and a lot of different CSS stylings and everything. So I think we're about done. Obviously, there's a lot more we could go into, but I think that's a good stopping point. So today I want to go into, once you actually have your website, how do you see how it's doing and how do you make it better for people trying to find it and that kind of stuff. So not a whole lot of coding today, but we're going to go over some theory and I'll show you how to integrate Google Analytics and places and other things like that into your website. So if I go to Google Analytics, you'll see that I put a bunch of links in the description. It's just analytics.google.com. And this is usually what you're going to use to measure your website traffic and where it came from. Now, there's other options out there, but this one is free, so a lot of people do end up using that. And kind of what this measures is, who's coming to your site and where they got there from and what device they're on, that type of stuff. Now, what it won't tell you is exactly what they're doing on their site, as far as like if you want to think about it, if you wanted to have a screen recording or something like that of what they're seeing and what they're clicking on, you're not going to get that kind of level of detail. If you do want that level of detail, there is another type of analytic tool. An example of one of those is Hotjar. There's other ones too. I don't have any affiliation with Hotjar. It's one that I've heard of people using. And there's heat maps and recordings of actual users coming to your site. So that one is paid though, of course. So I think there's a free tier, but for the most part it's paid. Whereas Google Analytics, you can use it for free forever. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're talking about what kind of things you want to look at, what you're trying to measure with your website. But yeah, I think for the most part, Google Analytics is what you're going to want to use. So I'll show you how to set that up. So if you go to analytics.google.com, and again, I put this in the description. If you've never set up a site, it'll say welcome to Google Analytics, and you can set it up for free. If you do have another site already, you probably already know how to set one up, so I won't go into that. But there is an administrator link in the bottom left if you already have a site and you want to make a new one. So let's go ahead and set this up, and I'm just going to create a test website. And you can choose whether or not you want to share all these things. I'm probably not going to, so you could kind of learn about these things and see what you want to do. I'm going to hit next, and now they kind of have this thing called the Google Analytics 4 property, which is supposed to be used for both websites and apps. Before it was just websites and apps were separately, and now this is a combination of the two. So you can use an advanced option where you create a universal analytics property instead, but I think you'd want to use kind of their go forward solution, which is the Google Analytics 4 property. So I'm just going to put test here again, and your time zone, and I'm just going to put Chicago time, and we'll hit next. And you can answer these questions. I'm just going to select a couple things here. Okay. You're going to want to read this. Good enough. I accept. And let's see what we get here. So, what do you want for emails? I'm going to uncheck these, but if you want those emails, obviously leave those checked. And in here, you're going to be able to set up your platform. And now I'm going to choose web, but obviously if you're making an iOS or Android app, you would choose those. But with this being a web development course, we're going to go ahead and choose web. Okay, let's go ahead and I'm going to do admin.modular.dev. I don't need to get it set up here, but we'll go ahead and just do it for an example. And we'll just say modular dev and hit create stream. Okay, so when we do that, it's going to come up with some things. I'm going to close out of this. And probably what you're going to want to do here is take this global site tag and just kind of expand that out so you can see this. And by now you're familiar with HTML code, so this should look somewhat familiar. Obviously this is some JavaScript here, but basically what we need to do, as it says, is put this into the head of every web page that you want to measure. So if I take this, and if I have a website that I'm working on, I can put it right here in this head. Now we go ahead and run this, and I'll choose Chrome. So I have a test site. Now if I inspect this and I kind of look at what's going on, we will see here in the sources panel that we did load some JavaScript, and you would see that same thing in the network panel where we're loading something from googletagmanager.com, and that's essentially what they're going to use to track us and track our users on the site. So with that being said, that's how you use Google Analytics, or that's how you set it up. So now when you come back into it, let's see here. When you come back into it, now you can view all of your real-time stats. So if I go to real-time, it'll show me who's there right now. It'll show me my acquisition. Now obviously I just made this, so there's nothing here yet. But yeah, that's how it works. So feel free to check that out and look into that. But that's how you set up Google Analytics, and that's how you put it on your page. So again, that's going to go in the head portion of your website, as will a lot of these different tracker things that we're going to be talking about today. Okay, along with that, I would be remiss to not mention, if you're doing any kind of advertising, like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything like that, advertising or analytics, it's going to be similar. You're going to want to stick that probably in the head, and there's going to be some kind of JavaScript that you load. So this is definitely kind of the way that things are being done right now. All right, let's go ahead and delete that. Let's go into the next portion here, which is the structured data. So structured data is a way for your website to appear differently on search results. Specifically in this case, I'm talking about Google search results, but Bing also would have this type of thing. So if you notice here, we have a recipe in this case that it appears differently than just a text search result. And that may be what you're looking for, because maybe you want, it looks more interesting. You can see exactly what it is without having to click on it. So that's kind of a desired effect. So if you are making recipes, this is probably what you'd want to do. And there's a whole bunch of different types of structured data. Again, I did link to this specific article in the description of this video. And you can explore all the different kinds. But what I want to show you right now is how you actually add structured data to your page. So if I'm on this one and I click structured data, you're going to see this. It says script type application /LD plus JSON. And a more succinct version of that would just be called JSON LD. So if you see anybody talk about JSON LD, like right here, this is what they're referring to. This is JSON, which we haven't covered yet, but it's a way to represent data in an easy way. So we have a bunch of properties, like in this case it's a type of recipe, it has a name of apple pie by grandma, an author of Elaine Smith, and so on and so forth. All it is just a bunch of data that we're trying to represent in a meaningful way. And that will tell Google how we want our search result to appear. So basically all we got to do is take this and bring it into here and put it right here in the head portion again. So again, we're in the head portion of the document. We haven't really spent much time there yet, but that's where a lot of this type of stuff is going to go. This is called, if you ever heard the term metadata, this is what they're referring to. This is data about your site that does not affect the way it looks, but it helps Google and other screen readers know exactly what's on the page. So with that being said, that's how you add it to the page. Now, how you might want to test to see if it works is another link called the rich results text. And you can see I pasted it in here, but I'll go ahead and rerun it just so you can see. If you go to this search.google.com/test/rich results, you can go to either URL or code. So you could put in, and if your website is already out there, you could put in a link to it. Otherwise, you could go to the code tab. And basically what we want to do in this case is we want to copy and paste all of our code and put it into this box here and hit test code. And a lot of times you're going to get these types of things, and I may, who knows if I'll mess it up. We'll see. Okay, looks like I did all right. In this case, it says our page is eligible for rich results, and the detected items was a recipe and a review snippet result. And it is both of those because not only is it a recipe, but it has this kind of 5 stars or 4.8 stars here. So that's part of a review snippet. So with that being said, you can test these out, make sure things are working. It looks like there's a few warnings here. It says it's missing a field. These are optional fields, so they're not required, but I could put in a video or I could put in keywords to help Google, maybe show a video of my recipe in this case, which maybe will generate more traffic to my website. So at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? We want people to come to our websites. We want them to produce some kind of result for us, whether it's somebody buying something or maybe being aware of something. That's why we build websites in the first place. So making search results more appealing to people is going to be ideal in terms of getting them to your website. So rich text snippets, that's going to be very important to do that. And again, I've put those links in the description of this video. Another thing I wanted to go over is the sharing debugger for Facebook, and it's going to be very similar for other social media sites as well. But for example, if you have a page on your site that you want to share on Facebook, you need to do a few things for it to show up correctly. Otherwise, it might not look right when people do it. So I kind of grabbed this test URL here. This is for an Apple iPad. Let's go ahead and run this, and obviously you would put your own site in there, but let's go ahead and debug. And in this case, you're going to see exactly what the user would see if we shared this page on Facebook. And this actually looks pretty nice. We've got the picture here, a little description, little title, and those things, if you don't specify, Facebook tries to figure it out themselves, and sometimes they do a good job and sometimes they don't. So what they recommend doing is using something called Open Graph, and I'll go over a little bit of Open Graph right now. But again, this is going to go in the head part of your website. So this is not anymore talking about JSON LD. We're talking about Open Graph now. So if I go to this show all raw tags, you're going to see all of the metadata, and a lot of it is using meta tags here, that Apple put in to their site. So if we go to this site, let's actually try it here. Let's go to this site and go to view page source, and we'll see all of this meta data here, and this is exactly what Facebook's looking for in this case. So if we had taken this and putting it into our website, now we'd get some of that metadata there. So just so you know what it is, that's what Open Graph is. It's using meta tags. In this case, you can see here we have this OG image, and we have the image content. So this will be the image that gets displayed right here. And we have title, description, URL. So that's what's going to be displayed here. And so basically you can customize exactly how you want it to look on Facebook. And, you know, like I say, there's going to be very similar tools out there for LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, that type of thing. So I generally will look at those, but in general, Facebook is kind of the biggest one. So if you get it working for one, it will probably work somewhat well for the others, but you can still run it through their debugger just to make sure that it looks good. Different websites will have different size images that they recommend, so you definitely can put specific things. In this case, there is a couple Twitter ones here for what type of content it is. In this case, they're using a large image summary, whereas you might want something different if you're sharing your website on Twitter. So again, that's the Facebook for Developers Open Graph Debugger, or Sharing Debugger, I guess is what it's called. But again, it's using Open Graph. So if you ever want to Google it and see all the different things you can put in an Open Graph, that's what you can look for. The last thing I wanted to go over is the Google Search Console, and Bing again is going to have something similar to this, but basically what the goal of this is to show you how well your website is doing for search and find any other issues. So one thing I haven't mentioned in the past is a sitemap, but a sitemap basically is a list of links on your website. So let's see if I can find one here. Let's see. Okay, this is a site that I've done, and I think it's just /sitemap in this case. No, let's try a different one. Platteville Web Solutions /sitemap. Okay, here's a sitemap, and this is something that you can put on your website to have a bunch of URLs here. In this case, this tells Google, well, it tells any robot basically that these are the different pages on my site, and that you can get to them at that location. So that's what Google Search Console is going to do, and I'll kind of show you exactly what that looks like. Let me back up just a second. So if you come here, you're going to see welcome to Google Search Console, and it's going to ask you for a domain and a URL a URL prefix. So I would recommend using this domain one. Otherwise, you're going to have to specify HTTPS, www. blah blah blah, and then you're gonna have to do another one for HTTP, and it could get very lengthy and confusing. This domain one kind of puts them all together. So if, for example, I have HTTPS www.modular.dev, that's kind of my main site, but some people might get to it without the www. Or they might get to it without the S and just go to the HTTP version. This domain one, if you just specify the domain right here, is going to get you all of those versions of the site, which usually is what you want. Now, if you have a maybe subdomain, admin.modular.dev, for example here, you can still put that, and it's going to cover all of those subdomains. So it will cover the HTTP and the HTTPS version, as well as any other subdomains of that subdomain. So you would hit continue here, and it's going to ask for some verification, in which case you can go through those steps and verify. However, I'll show you a website that I already have verified, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. And over here, so this is platformwebsolutions.com. This is my other company that I run, and you know, not actively pushing this site, but I am getting some searches, and you can go ahead and view the performance report, and you can see what people are searching for to find you. In this case, a lot of them are searching for some of my clients that I've made. So you can go through that. You can also go through the site maps over here, and that will show you. You can enter your sitemap first of all if you haven't done that yet, and tell Google where to find your sitemap. But once you have done it, it will crawl that and discover all of the links for you. And what this is really going to do, like the end goal of this is to get all of your pages of your website in Google search results. So to add a sitemap to this is going to help Google know where all of your pages are, and that way they'll be covered. So for example, if I look at this sitemap here, it's discovered 15 URLs. So if I click it, and I see the index coverage here, it's going to say I have 14 valid links, and I have one link that was excluded. It looks like it was a duplicate or something like that that was in the sitemap. And you know, your site may have a lot more than that. It might have hundreds or thousands of pages, in which case you can kind of go through the ones that have errors and go through the ones that are valid and kind of make whatever changes you need to. Now, there is a couple other things in here in this Google Search Console, such as mobile usability. It will tell you if there's any errors using phones, for example. And there's other actions as well, such as security issues. So you know, you probably don't need to check those too often, but you probably want to make sure you check them at least sometimes. The main thing for this Google Search Console is to make sure your website is getting indexed correctly by Google. And that way you'll show up in search results. So I think that's about it. I know I went over a lot, but we talked about Facebook debugging, rich text snippets for search results, Google Analytics, Google Search Results, or Google Search Console. And there's definitely more tools out there. These are just the ones I thought I should highlight as you're beginning your web development journeys. So yeah, definitely reach out. If you know any other tools that are very helpful to you, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Otherwise, if you have any other questions about the ones that I mentioned, definitely feel free to ask. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.